Dark impulses lurk beneath the surface of all of us. Without warning, they can emerge, unleashing a monster from within. Meadowvale is a peaceful working-class suburb of Toronto. A place to raise a family, where neighbors look out for one another. There's a great park nearby where kids can safely hang out. And in the heart of the park is Lake Aquitaine, named after the famous Scottish lake, which is said to be haunted by the Loch Ness Monster. As darkness falls, the park is particularly inviting for teenagers. But all that changes one balmy spring night. In true crime, investigation and conviction may take years. But every detective knows that the crucial clue is always there, somewhere in the first 72 hours. April 30th, 1998. 3 teenage girls have been questioned by police for hours about attacks on them earlier that night. The series of assaults began with Jennifer and her girlfriend walking home through the park around 8 p.m.
We saw this guy on a bike. He didn't really think too much, so we kept walking. And my friend said, "Turn around, tell me if that guy's following us." So I turned around and I said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, he is following us."
He approached the girls and propositioned them, offering them $20 for sex. When they told him to forget it, he exposed himself and started masturbating in front of them.
When I saw him masturbating, I was freaked out. It wasn't funny at all. It was completely a shock.
Martha, the victim of a second assault, reports an even scarier encounter to the police. It was about 11 p.m. She too had been approached by a man on a bicycle who demanded sex for money. She told him to get lost. This got the guy riled. He grabbed her, wouldn't let up. But she was able to break away before he could do any further harm. Martha wasn't the last one assaulted tonight. There's been another victim. But this woman wasn't able to get away. The attack on her escalated to a violent rape. The investigation has been assigned to Detective Blaise Doherty, who's just finished interviewing the latest victim, Rachel.
All the girls that we dealt with that evening were between 15 and 17, very young, and certainly something like this was a traumatic event for them. The oldest girl that I dealt with, 17, she'd been through the most that evening. The 17-year-old girl had been violently attacked and punched, and during the attack, her glasses had been knocked off and smashed.
Rachel was brutally raped. Semen samples have been taken from her for potential DNA identification of the attacker. Because the assaults were all committed in a similar way by a young man on a bicycle, Detective Doherty is convinced that the same person committed all 3 crimes. Police need to act fast. This predator's dangerous, going from flashing to rape in one night. They call on a sketch artist to draw a composite portrait of the offender.
She was able to give us a very, very good description, even though it had been dark out, was that of a male. He was white, between 19 and 23 years of age. Fairly slender build. He was a little bit scruffy appearance. Any situation where there's a serial sex offender at large, then obviously the stakes are much higher. We have an obligation as investigators to identify this guy as quickly as possible for the purposes of protecting the community.
By the next day, the media have picked up the story and informed Meadowvale residents that there's a rapist on the prowl. The composite sketch of the suspect and a Crime Stoppers tip number are posted. Police dub the predator they're now hunting the Loch Ness Monster. The response from the community is overwhelming.
People would call in and say, look, I have a neighbor who looks like this guy, or I know a guy who's got a history of this type, and he's someone that you should be looking at.
Police have to follow up on every one of these leads. They bring in more officers to help, including Detective Rob Shear.
I was involved in the canvass, and an area canvass is one of the single most important aspects of an investigation. Virtually every suspect that we encountered could have been a viable culprit for this crime.
Hi, sir.
The descriptions were closely matched. The area was basically a buzz of activity. And the community became very involved in trying to help us catch the person responsible.
People are on round-the-clock alert, watching out for unusual behavior in their neighborhood. 72 hours into the investigation, police are getting a growing list of tips.
I know that there are people that took it upon themselves to walk around the park, checking people out and making telephone calls to the police if they saw anyone suspicious.
I mean, even friends of mine had said, oh, I know a guy that looks like that, and oh, that could be this guy.
They say in the world everybody's got a double or a twin. There was a number of people in the Meadowvale area that looked a lot like the composite drawing.
Hey, he's over there! He's over there!
Some of these guys were being approached by people that lived around them and said, hey, you look like that rapist guy. Initially, when I saw the composite drawing, I looked at it and said, okay, this guy is distinctive enough that we're gonna have a fairly small list of suspects. I was wrong. We were up to 312 people who looked like the composite drawing.
They are looking for a needle in a haystack, and the haystack keeps getting bigger. Time is running out. Serial sex offenders often strike with perverse regularity. How long do they have before the Loch Ness Monster strikes again? The community of Meadowvale, especially the teenage victims, have been terrorized by a sexual predator. Rachel, the victim of rape, has been devastated. The community is on edge. They see suspects everywhere. Almost 2 months after the night of sexual frenzy, there have been no further reports of assaults in Meadowvale. But police are very aware the Loch Ness Monster could strike at any time. In an effort to narrow their search from over 300 suspects, investigators bring in behavioral profiler Jim Van Allen. His first task is to develop an unknown offender profile.
There was an individual who was obviously targeting this one geographic area, who was motivated by his sexually deviant needs. He was engaging in acts of exhibitionism to the women. He was making verbal proposals to engage in sexual acts in exchange for money. These weren't angry comments. To me, they reflected an unsophisticated offender, a very impulsive and brazen offender. It's believed that only 15% of these people will ever escalate to the more serious hands-on sexual assaults. The impulsive type of behavior exhibited during the incidents strongly suggested to me that this individual would go on and repeat serious sexual offenses and likely continue until he was caught.
Police now fear that the Loch Ness Monster could even turn deadly. Investigators learn from Van Allen that the man they're looking for is what's known as a power reassurance rapist, someone who feels powerless in their own life or relationship and who needs to assert themselves against someone weaker.
The repeated approaches, even during the same night, sometimes minutes apart, suggested, in terms of intelligence or intellect, this person would likely be scored as normal, perhaps slightly below normal, but there was no real sophistication to the crime.
While this helps police eliminate some of the suspects, behavioral profiling is just one piece of the puzzle. Investigators then consult geographic profiler Brad Moore.
The investigators were hoping that I could provide them with an area that they should start to look for the offender and basically his base of operations. His choice of locations to commit his crimes says a lot about the offender. The fact that he chose just these trails as opposed to looking for victims on streets or in shopping plazas or other locations told me that he was comfortable in this area.
A key principle of geographic profiling is what's known as distance decay.
The basic premise behind distance decay is that people do more things closer to home than they do further from home, and businesses use it to decide where to put a new franchise. But it also applies to criminals. Criminals also tend to generally behave according to distance decay.
Restaurant one.
Sexual predators exhibit certain hunting patterns in their geographic territory. Brad Moore tracks these patterns with the help of a software program, preparing what he calls a jeopardy surface.
It divides the hunting area, or the area of all the crime sites, into 40,000 individual squares, and it assigns a number to it. It takes that grid and assigns elevations based on those numbers and displays it as a jeopardy surface. And that surface looks very much like a mountain range. The higher you get on the mountain, the more likely it is that the offender lives in that area. If they have a list of persons of interest, they would prioritize those that live closer to the peak first for further follow-up. Remembering it's not an X marks the spot, it doesn't mean that the guy at the top of the list is your bad guy. It just means that that is, based on geography, the best guy to start with.
With the help of Brad Moore and Jim Van Allen, police are able to eliminate more than 2/3 of the suspects, but that still leaves over 100. After police factor in the composite sketch and those people whose alibis don't hold up, they are left with a list of 18 suspects.
All of the top 18 looked very close to the composite drawing. They all lived in the area or worked in the area. They all had criminal histories with us.
How can they go from these 18 suspects to one guilty man? The DNA of the semen samples taken from the rape victim could provide the key. The Forensic Center finally calls in to say that they have a DNA profile of the rapist. It's now nearly 3 months since the crime, and police need to compare the DNA taken from the semen on the rape victim to the DNA of their suspects. They start with their top 4. The first suspect is John B. When the detectives come calling, his girlfriend says he isn't home.
From the very beginning, he was one of the top 4 that we looked at.
He has numerous outstanding warrants and has recently been fired from his job.
This individual had been around quite a bit, was very streetwise.
Shortly after police left, he calls them, claiming he has just arrived at home. They felt he was lying.
No, I just got in outside. Just so you know. Yeah, I totally understood.
The The second suspect, Eric R., is a transient who spends a lot of time in the park. He's even been known to sleep there some nights. He has a minor criminal record and no alibi for the night in question. The third suspect, Paul W., has been known to follow girls in the neighborhood. Some girls seem to like him, while others report there's something creepy about him. Police discover that his sister moved out of their family's home after filing a report that he'd molested her. The fourth suspect, Marvin P., had come to police attention based on a Crime Stoppers tip. When police decide to interview him at home, they discover he has moved out of the neighborhood and back in with his ex-girlfriend on the other side of town. Like some of the other suspects, he looks quite different from when he was originally interviewed.
Some of these guys, they cut their hair, they grew mustaches and beards, everything short of the Groucho Marx glasses to try and convince people that, it's not them.
Marvin P. and the three other suspects are brought in for further questioning. Is one of them the rapist? Or is the Loch Ness Monster still out there, about to slip through their net? To solve a brutal rape in the midst of a vibrant community, police have brought in their top 4 suspects. They need to get samples of their DNA. The first suspect, John B., knows the system well. He doesn't trust police and claims he'll be framed. But detectives convince him that because of his outstanding warrants, it's in his best interests to cooperate. The second suspect, Eric R., feels that giving a DNA sample is an invasion of his privacy. But he reluctantly agrees for fear of appearing guilty. The third suspect, Paul W., realizes it might make him look suspicious, but he adamantly refuses to let police take his DNA. He won't tell them why. The fourth suspect, Marvin P., appears shy but direct. Police have discovered that he was once arrested for robbery and served 6 months. He readily gives a blood sample for his DNA. The 4 suspects are released, but since Paul W. was the only one who refused to give a blood sample, investigators put him under surveillance.
Deviant, sexually motivated offenders really don't stop. If they're feeling that they're under a lot of suspicion or the circumstances in their life changes, it might be easier for them to control their impulses, but they're never really gone.
In a matter of days, the lab gets back to police with the DNA analysis.
Detective Doherty answered his cell phone, and I could hear part of the conversation coming across the telephone, and that there had been a match, and it was probably one of the happiest days of my life. There's a real charge to knowing that you've finally caught the person that you've been hunting for the last 3 months.
Police arrest the rapist and bring him down to the station. This is the story he tells. It all started around the time of the breakup with his girlfriend, a period of high stress. This concurs with the profile constructed by Van Allen.
It's not unusual at all for these people to wait until some peak period of stress in their life to go out and commit their offenses. And this is a way that they can attempt to rebalance their life and make themselves feel better about themselves.
Sex crimes of this nature are all about power and control. Very little has to do with actual sex. He's just a person that needed to exert that type of power and control over female victims, and that's what made him feel better.
After his first pathetic attempt to entice the girls into sex failed, this powerless man became more bold. When Martha came along, he had built up his nerve to attempt a physical attack. By the time Rachel appeared, he had worked himself into a sexual frenzy. Marvin Payne needed to have absolute power, and he found it in rape. Payne thought he could get away with his violent attack, but the DNA sample collected from the victim in the first 72 hours gave him away. Half a year later, Payne is convicted of aggravated sexual assault and is sentenced to 10 years in prison.
I said to him, why, if you had done this, why did you give us your blood sample? And his response was that he thought the whole thing was just gonna blow over. In his mind, he hoped it was gonna blow over.
I was really happy for the sentence, but it still worries me that sometime he could come back.
While the community of Meadowvale may now be a safer place, each of the victims still lives with the memories of that night, the memories of the Loch Ness Monster. The stories on 72 Hours are true. The detectives and forensic scientists are the ones who actually worked on the case. The names of the convicted are real.